Good evening, everyone. Today we start the last period of Tanya, the beginning of the end of a long journey. Page 324. So this is a letter from the Alter Rebbe. A letter the Alter Rebbe wrote in the year 1802, and similar to the previous letter, which when we started the previous letter, we said that Alter Rebbe wrote a number of letters to the Kehillas, to the new Chassidic communities, instructing them with, giving them different instructions how a Chabad Kehillah should run. So this also is a letter of the sort that was sent to all the different communities, the Chabad communities, and in here there are this letter contains three different parts, three different requests of the Alter Rebbe of the communities. And the Alter Rebbe begins with the words of the Pasuk, the Pasuk tells us that we're supposed to reprimand, or probably a better word than reprimand is to attempt to influence our fellow. And Chazal say, why say Hecheach Techiach, which is a double lashon. It should say, Techiach Esam Yisacha, or Hecheach Esam Yisacha. Heichach, whatever the word is in Hebrew. What's the double lashon? So Chazal say, I feel a me'apam. This means they have to do repeatedly, even 100 times. 100 times is a random number. In other words, even many, many times, and if it's not 100 times, more times. And in very simple words, that means that we have an achrayus, one of the big ideas in Yiddishkeit, and how it's different from the Western world, is in the Western world, we live by the Western world lives by the slogan, live and let live. Everyone makes their own choices. You do what you want to do. The other person will do what they want to do. Mix out. As long as the other person isn't hurting you, just live and let live.
But a lot of people, if you tell them 100 times or 50 times, they get upset and they scream at you.
So if you look back in Shulchan Aruch, it says, when can you stop being trying to influence? When the person hits you, then you know that you can stop. They stay. It's in Shulchan Aruch, yeah. And Yiddishkeit there's no such thing. Kol Yisrael Arevim Zeh. We're all responsible for each other. We're all one living organism. We're all one entity. And therefore, when we see someone is doing something wrong, it's our obligation to tell them in a nice way, in a kind way, in a loving way. And by the way, if you can't do it in a nice way, in a kind way, in a loving way, don't do it. The point isn't that your voice should be heard. What? Right. Point of Hecheach is not that you get to scream and demonstrate your righteous indignation and show the other person how much holier you are than him. The point is that you want to influence them to change their ways, and to do that it has to be softly, with kindness, with love.
But not everybody has wording to help someone or lochiach someone.
Then don't.
People cannot say it.
The Gemara says, I think it was Reb Nachman who said, Tmihani, he said that I wonder if there's anyone in this generation, this is already in times of the Gemara, who knows how to do Hechacha. That's what he said. Because people think that, someone's talking, shh, that's Hecheach. That's not Hecheach. That's you demonstrating your own anger in a way which is 100% of the time ineffective.
I did it to someone, I didn't say shh, I said, because she would say, become a big tzaddik. That's his answer. What I would tell him?
So we have to know, which means you have to try to influence, and if it doesn't work, you should know that you're the one who's guilty. That means that you didn't approach it right. It takes chachma, it takes wisdom, how to do it, when to do it. Sorry? As was? Yeah, but that's I don't know if that's Medin Hecheach Techiach. No. Yeah. No, there is. Again, I'm not saying there could be in the shul to keep the decorum of the shul. There could be someone who screams at people who talk, and maybe even kicks them out. And that's not. I'm not saying that's wrong, but that's not Hecheach Techiach. That's not influencing the person. That's okay. The shul has to be quiet, but you change. You cause the person to change. No, the person's still going to talk in shul wherever he is. Okay. And if it didn't work the first time, you try the second time, you try the third time, you try the fourth time, you don't give up. So Alter Rebbe says over here also.
Don't give up.
The Alter Rebbe he's insinuating that this is something which I've spoken about and I've written about, and I'm going to continue writing and speaking about it and trying to change you and try to influence you. And what is that? And here the Alter Rebbe is going to use very passionate language. There's a tremendous amount of urgency which you hear in the wording the Alter Rebbe uses, and as I mentioned in the last class, is that when the Alter Rebbe spoke about davening, you can sense how by the Alter Rebbe, davening properly is negeya benefesh. And he's so emotional about it. Let's read these words. The translation is not going to do it justice. The and therefore. I can't hold myself back. I can't be quiet. And I will keep on screaming, even if my voice is getting weak. And I don't have the koyach, I'm still going to keep on screaming even if it's in a weak voice. Please, I beg of you, berachmin nefishin, have mercy, have rachmanis, chusu no al nafshei seichem, and have rachmanis on your neshamas. V'hishamru v'hizaharu me'oid. Please, I want you to be careful and meticulous, very, very much al ha'torah when it comes to Torah, and v'alaveda shabeleiv zu tefillah when it comes to davening, which is, the davening is called aveda shabeleiv. You see what I'm saying? The words of the Alter Rebbe, they cause you to shudder. The way the Alter Rebbe is, he's begging by Chassidim. He's saying, and again, this letter, the Alter Rebbe is not talking so much about individual davening. Here the Alter Rebbe is talking about the way davening has to be in a shul. It should be Haveda Shabalev Zu Tefillah B'Kavana. I'm talking about davening B'Kavana. Lahaschil Kulam Yachad Ke'echad. The Alter Rebbe is saying, I want the minyan, everyone should start together. Mila b'mila, and say together, and word for word, everyone is davening together. Veloy and not zebekoi v'zebekoi. Not one person is holding here and davening, the other person is holding there and davening. V'zedoimim, another person is stam twiddling his thumbs and doing nothing. V'zem mesiach sicha betel, another person is talking about his stock portfolio. He's stam speaking shtusim. Hashem yishmerenu, the Eibishter should protect us.
Please. So you want unity with everybody.
Alter Rebbe is saying you have to understand.
So what do you have to start earlier so that you can keep up?
That's different. Alter Rebbe is not talking about that, obviously. The point is that people are coming to shul, okay, so you come 10 minutes late or 15 minutes late, you have a conversation, you're having a coffee, davening started. Alter Rebbe is saying you have to understand, davening, it's a team sport. Tefillah b'tzibur is a team sport.
You don't see this, what he's saying today.
You don't see this. You do see this.
I don't see
You see exactly this. You walk into shul and you see
everybody's
that Zebekoi and Zebekoi and Zed Doimim and Zemasiach Sicha B'Teila, exactly what Alter Rebbe is describing.
That's what I don't see. That's what's going on.
Talk about how, as we're saying, the more things change, nothing changes. Alter Rebbe is telling, it's as if the Alter Rebbe was walking into shul in 2024 and looking around and saying, "This is what I don't want. Please don't. This is not the way it's supposed to be." It's not that 10 people coming together and everyone's davening. The whole idea of Tefillah b'tzibur is that people coming together and they're davening as a kehillah. They're davening as a tzibur. You start together, you daven together. There's no speaking during davening. There's no he's there. There's no stam. It's not a time to be doing whatever you're doing. It's davening.
Ba'avonatenu harabim still continues.
Especially during rain.
Anyways, the bottom line is it's very easy to read a page like this. I don't want to start saying, well, look how everyone else is so terrible. This letter is written to me, the letter is written to you, and we have to make sure that we're doing this. So we start together with the minyan, word for word. And Alter Rebbe continues and says, the main reason, the main problem, or Grama ben Azaka, the main cause of the damages in this area, it's because of the Chazanim. Shu hefker. Hefker like it's literally mamish like today's situation. It's hefker. Up for grabs. Anyone who wants to go and to walk over, is grabbing the honor. Or machma she'ein gam echad reitza b'chul. There's no one else. There's no one who's qualified who wants to daven for them.
If he lives today.
So what does that mean?
What does what mean?
People don't ask for permission to go to the Yom.
And therefore, what's the Sheldon? What's bothering you?
I don't know. What does he mean that people were running over to the Yom?
Unqualified people. People who are rushing during davening, people who are not leading the davening properly. And therefore, this is the Alter Rebbe says, here's the advice I'm giving you. And I'm making this an establishment, an ordinance. This is a rule which should never be transgressed again. That people, established people who are qualified to be a chazan should be chosen. How are you gonna choose them? Either al pi hagedol, in other words, make a pool of people who are qualified, and then you make a hagedol, or you can have elections if you want. What do I mean by qualified people? The Alter Rebbe says the Hainu, this means mispalim mila b'mila, they daven word for word, b'derech hamitzua. In other words, how do you say b'derech hamitzua? In the average,
Like middle ground, right?
middle ground, b'koil ram, and the davening,
Average.
yeah. As we'll see. In other words, not too long, not too short. B'koil ram, they're saying each word out loud. V'loi ma'arichim yeser medai. These are people who are not going to take too long because they take way too long. So that's now also not what's needed. V'loi mekatzerim v'choitzim chas v'shalom. They're not mekatzer and they don't chap the davening also chas v'shalom. V'alei mana, these people mutal chayva. It is their obligation later lefnei ateva to go and to be the chazan kol echad ve'echad. Every single one of them biyoymei asher yagia loy, on their day, which is when it arrives, and it's the chazan's responsibility v'lesaf elav saviv samuch to gather around himself kol hamispallim b'kil sasak upon him v'lei balachash to gather those people who he knows they daven a little b'kil, a little loud, not too loud, v'lei balachash, not people who daven silently, v'lei chaytum chas v'shalom, not the people who are chapping, who are busy rushing through davening. Sorry?
The Mishnah Berurah says befeirush that you shouldn't daven out loud.
Shmoneh Esrei.
No, he says afilu b'psukei d'zimra.
Okay.
That's the wording. That's
Okay,
the wording
okay.
befeirush. He says that you don't.
I'd have to look in. I'd have to look.
Because it disturbs other people.
Sheldon, we're going in circles. We've been through this before.
Yes.
I'd have to look at the Mishnah Berurah and see what he says. But even if that is correct, the Mishnah Berurah says, Kedai the Alter Rebbe the Alter Rebbe can argue in the Mishnah Berurah. It's fine.
Mishnah Berurah 101. Kufa.
Okay, so here, I bring that there. I'll look it up. But either way, the Alter Rebbe is telling us differently.
Rabbi, the Sfaradim, the Chazan said loud.
I know the Sfardim they daven the word right. The whole davening, everyone says it together. Yeah,
Mila b'mila.
yeah.
Yeah.
I got pulled into a minyan once in Israel, and a Sephardi minyan, and they said every word out loud.
Yeah, come shachit every Sunday morning. I daven.
Everybody says each word.
When I was in
It
Israel,
was driving me crazy.
when I was 17 years old. So then in Israel, there's something that was called tankim, which means tankim, tanks, mitzvah tanks.
Tanks.
Oh, mitzvah tank. Oh.
So they had in Shabbos. So in Israel, the mitzvah tank operation is run literally like an army, like tanks. And there's a person, and they have a person in charge, the general, the captain, it's holding.
General.
And they deploy the tanks. So everyone, they had I think they have 17 mitzvah tanks, or they had that then. Every one of them, Friday, is taken to a certain location, and it's left there in a certain community, and it's stocked with food for Shabbos. 2 bachrim come, they take the bus, they come, they find the mitzvah tank, they go in, they spend the Shabbos over there, and over Shabbos they go around and speak to people and do so I went once to the Shabbos. It was actually a Temani Shabbos called Gi'ulim.
What's the name?
Gi'ulim.
Yolim.
Near Tanya or near Chadera, somewhere around there. Yeah, it was a fascinating Shabbos. So we come there, okay, went with all the Bacher, we arrive there, mitzvah tank is all ready. Okay, we go to Shul Friday night, we have our Shul Shabbos, we go to sleep. Because the mitzvah tank has, it's like a RV, it has, yeah.
Unbelievable. It's
And
experience.
the tank is parked right near a shul, the central shul of the community. Around 6 o'clock in the morning, we're woken up. With noise. We rub our eyes. My da'ani wash nagel lasa. They started already. Davening has started already.
It's not early that morning. Yeah.
6 o'clock in the morning, Shabbos morning. Davening has started. Okay, quickly we run, we rush, we go with the shul, and word for word, the entire davening out loud, chanted together, and it was like took 4 hours the davening, and what was fascinating even more was about the laning. At the laning, they have a maturgaman, just like it was in times of the Gemara. They have a maturgaman after every single pasuk. The laning takes so long, and after that, in the Haftarah also they have a maturgaman. A little kid does unkelus. No, unkelus. Targum unkelus.
Do you know Aramaic?
If you look at the Mishnah, it talks about how you read Torah. It talks you read at the maturgaman. But you look at the
It's
Rambam.
Mama Lashon for those people, not for us.
It's not their mama lashon.
They don't.
Mamash onkelos.
They don't speak.
It's still not
When
the
they're
Chazan.
Bafu, When they were
Verstehe.
brought up, what they
Yeah,
spoke,
that's what
what
I'm
English
But the Rambam didn't live in Bavel. And the Rambam's told Torah writes about the Temarim follow the Rambam.
Not today. They don't.
Yeah.
Of course, today the same.
Yeah, so what they do?
My
No, he-
brother-in-law is a Yamani.
No, he's saying something else.
Speak Aramaic.
No, they don't. No, they don't speak Aramaic, but they do the
but they
Targum
eat.
during Leni. Yes,
Oh.
yeah.
But they don't speak Aramaic.
Anyway, it was a fascinating experience. A very fascinating experience. Okay. And by the way, it took me like an hour till I was able to even follow because their pronunciation
Yeah, it's a
is
little-
very, very different.
Yeah.
The Nekudas and okay. Anyways, the Alter Rebbe says, I want to everything I'm saying, these are not my ideas. These are all in the Takanas Yishanas Bekama Ayaris, in the ordinances of many cities. As we know, back in the day, different cities had their every city with a major Jewish population had their own book of takanas, of the minhagim of the city. Today you say, which minhagim do you follow? Okay, I'm a Lubavitcher, I'm a Brisker, I'm a this, I'm a that, I'm a Belzer, I'm a Sardik. But back in the day, the minhagim it was not about which Eidah you were, but the cities, every city had their minhagim. So in these things that the Rebbe is saying, the idea of, everyone davening together, the idea of a chazan being chosen, the idea of all these things I'm saying, the Rebbe, it's not my chiddush. This is explained. If you look at many of the cities, these are the takanas. Va'ata basi, I am coming now only lechachkan ulechazkan ula'amtzan. I'm coming now just to renew them and to strengthen them. Bal yumeitu eid lo'elam, they shouldn't be weakened forever. Chas v'shalom. And then the Alter Rebbe explains, Gewalt.
Oy vey.
Gewalt. There's an expression of pain, of anguish. We know that Rabbeim, when they wanted to, in Mamarim we find that when they wanted to say something which was particularly emotional, they would revert to Yiddish, the Mama Lashon.
Oy,
Gewalt. There's no Gewalt. Ad Masai is a lanu l'mekish. How much longer is this going to be for us a stumbling block? And the Alter Rebbe is going to say very strong words. It's not enough for us. Is it not enough? Is it not enough? All the reprimands and all the tzaras that we've already suffered. Hashem yishmeranu. The Eibusher should guard us. And He should comfort us with a double comforting. And He should purify our hearts so that we should have a desire to serve Him properly and to daven properly. So this is something which also we find in the works of the Gedolim. We know that after the Gezeres Tach V'Tat, after the Chmielnitsky pogroms, the Tferes Yom Tov spoke very strongly. He says that the tzaras that came on the Yidden was because they're talking during davening. Good. So the Alter Rebbe apparently is telling us that he's saying that there's so much tzaras that come to us because because our tefillah b'tzibur is not the way it's supposed to be. And the Alter Rebbe with pain is screaming Gewalt, like genug shein. Is it not enough what we've already endured, what we've already suffered? These words, Ad Masai Yisrael L'Mekish, where does it come from? It comes from the Torah. So Moshe comes to Pari and he tells Pari, he warns them about the Makkah of the Arba that's going to come. So it says that Moshe and Aaron, they leave the room, right? And it says, "Vayemer Avdi Pari, Elov," right? The Vadam Pari say, "Ad Masay Zlanul Mekish." We got whipped already with 7 makas. We've gotten so much patch. We've gotten devastated and decimated. How much longer? How much longer do you plan on putting up with this? And Alter Rebbe is using these same words, like we've gotten makas. As Yidden, we've gotten makas again and again, and we still can't learn our lesson to stop speaking during davening and to daven altogether, mila b'mila, the way we're supposed to daven. Very powerful words. With that, we conclude the first part of the letter. As I mentioned, I said that Alter Rebbe in this letter, the Alter Rebbe is going to say 3 points, 3 ideas, and that was for the first point. Then the Alter Rebbe says, Gam also, my second request is, Lig Meir Kol Hashas. B'chol shana v'shana.
That's a big job.
Sorry?
That's a big job.
No. Finish the entire Shas every year. That in the community, again, this is a letter to the Kehillah. Kehillah should finish Shas every single year.
You should divvy it out.
Yeah.
To finish the whole Shas, u'b'chol year v'ir, and every single city, l'chalak ha-mesachtes, to distribute, to divide the mesachtes, al pi ha-geirel, eberatson. Once again over here, with the idea either, listen, if there's difficulty dividing, so you make a geirel, make a lottery, or beratson, you can have people choosing, and that's not the way it's done in Chabad. This, by the way, this letter is the chitas for Yud Ches Kislev. because Yutes Kislev is the beginning of the year Chitas, so this is the last day of Chitas. And Taka Yutes Kislev every single year is when in Chabad we make a Chalukas HaMaseh, a Chalukah of the Chalukas HaShas, yeah. So you're going to say, the Rebbe says, okay, then every single city, they have to finish their Shas every single year, that's great. So here we live in New York. So how many Masechtas are there in the Gemara? 35 Masechtas, somewhere around there, right?
63, what do you think?
That's Mishnah. That's Mishnah, not Gemara. Gemara, I think 34, I think, if I recall correctly. So this is pretty easy. So we need 34 people in New York to finish to take a Masechta, and then the rest of us, we're good, right?
Probably
Yeah.
some are 30 dots and some are 100 and...
So Alter Rebbe says that's correct. Alter Rebbe says there's no such loophole. If the city has many minyanim, then every minyan has to finish the Shas. But what if there aren't enough people? And if there's a minyan that's too small to be able to finish the Shas, you should try to get some people from a larger minyan to join them. Beval Yishuna, and that shouldn't be changed, and that's something which every single year, every Kehillah has to finish the entire Shas. Here's what's interesting. The interesting thing is, this letter, as I said, was written in Tav Kuf Samach Beis. 1 year later, Tav Kuf Samach Gimel, the Alter Rebbe writes another letter to the Chassidim, and if you turn to page 202, Shalom Aleichem, long time no see. So here we have something interesting. 202, and this is Siman Aleph of Igeres HaKodesh, right? Page Kuf Beis, right across. The first letter of Igeres HaKodesh was the letter that Alter Rebbe wrote to the Kehillas the year afterwards. So isn't that interesting? The first letter of Igeres HaKodesh is what the Alter Rebbe wrote in Tav Kuf Samach Gimel, and the last letter in Tanya and Kuntres is the year that Alter Rebbe wrote the year earlier. And if you look over here, the Alter Rebbe begins Peislim Bebracha. I want to start with a bracha Lavaruch Lahedus Lashem, to thank Hashem. Ki Toiv Shmua Toiv Hashama V'tchin Nafshi. I heard such good news. And I want to think, it's interesting because the last letter is Hechech Techiach. I'll have a reprimanding, right? Here, such good news I heard, and what's good? Ain't Toiv Ela Torah. Torah Hashem Tamima, not Stam Torah, but the complete Torah, the completion of Torah. Zu Hashlamas Kol Hashas Kulei Berev Ayaris Minyanam Anash. That Shas Taka was finished in most of the cities of Minyanam Anash. In other words, this is Alter Rebbe. A year later, Alter Rebbe is saying, thank you for listening, right? I'm thanking for the past, and I want to ask the future to keep on doing this. And then, if you look further in this letter, you turn the page. If you look on page Kuv Gimel, so here the Alter Rebbe says, now I want to repeat again, I want to add explanation about Kashak Fulah Shtucha, and again I want to repeat my request. My request is Shtucha Prusal Nechal Anshe Shlemim, before all the member Anash Hakreib Merchaikim Lakayim Aleim. And what's my request? Again, that people don't have time, shouldn't go. So here again, once again, the Alter Rebbe over here is repeating what he said. Yeah. So this is next year. The Alter Rebbe is reinforcing everything that he wrote earlier. And again, you see if he continues and says that who yes if the Chazan has to gather. He's repeating the Chazan has to gather all the people around him. Yeah. And if you look at the end of the second paragraph, Kamesha Kasafti Ishtakad, as I wrote last year. Mm-hmm. Yeah. In other words, Alter Rebbe is referring back to the letter which he wrote last year, which is the letter that we're learning right now. Back to where we are. The Rebbe says, and because that everyone who is taking part in this Chalukas Hashas, Yigmer la'atzmei b'chol shavua, should finish for himself every single week. Hatamnaya api shebetehillim, the 8 faces in the Tehillim, which is Kuf Yutes. So what is this all about? We know Tehillim, the capital Kuf Yutes of Tehillim is called the Tamnaya Api, because every single letter of the Aleph base has 8 psukim that begin with that letter. So it's called the Tzal. Alter Rebbe says that you should divide the Shas, and everyone who's taking part in this division every single week should finish Kapitel Kuf Yutes in Tehillim. And what's the reason for this? So the Friedrich Rebbe talks about this, and he says, you think, what's the connection between Tehillim and learning Gemara? Tehillim is the Chayre for Pashta people, and Gemara is for the big Talmidei Chachamim, right? One
big shot.
Yeah. So from here we see that in the words of the Friedrich Rebbe, Without Tehillim, there's no Gemara, and without Gemara, there's no Tehillim. That's what he says. You can't separate. Meaning that if you don't say Tehillim, what do you forget? You're learning the Torah. You're forgetting the nice Torah. You're forgetting the one who gave it. It becomes intellectual exercise, and you get lost in the
Mental exercise.
the mental exercise, and you're just like lahavdil. Someone learns science, and someone else can learn physics, and someone else can learn this. So another person learning the Talmud. Ahmad al-Islam. And in order not to do that, they take some Tehillim with kavana to that's what validates, elevates, and makes sure that your learning of Gemara is the way it's supposed to be. And what's that best Kufitas? So it's the longest kapitel in Tehillim, right? But besides for that, the whole kapitel Kufitas is talking about Torah mitzvahs. The whole kapitel Kufitas is about the David HaMelech extolling the beauty and the greatness of Torah.
Elu ve'elu divrei Elokim chayim.
That's true.
Tehillim and learning Gemara.
And also the reward is the same for reading Tehillim as
David HaMelech requested Negoim v'Alas.
as for the hardest Gemara.
David requested that, yeah. Negoim v'Alas. Now, by the way, that's not it's not Gemara, it's Mishnah. Negoim v'Alas are Mishnah, but whatever.
What's Mishnah?
There is no Gemara on it. He asked that it should have the same thing as Negoim v'Alas. Okay, stop. What you said is correct. So, just by the way, the Rebbe notes over here that he says later, "Isi Nayikim Kain." I've not seen that this is the minig actually. The Rebbe writes that the people who are learning, the people who are participating in the Chalukas Hashas, that every single one of them should say Kufiyutas every single week. However, the Rebbe adds over there that A'amur HaYunayik says, "My father Taka was Naik that every Shabbos Mincha time, the Rebbe's father would say the whole kapitel Kufiyutas." At the same time, the Rebbe acknowledges that he has not seen that this is the popular minig in Chabad communities, that those people who are participating in the Chilkas Hashas, they should say Kapitel Kufitas every single week.
Hey, the
How
same
should they
Tehillim.
divide it though?
Sorry?
How should it be divided? Does it matter?
Kufitas? Doesn't
matter.
As long as over the week you say it. But again, the Rebbe says that it's not the minig.
The week,
Yeah.
But here, every morning Shabbat, they're saying the whole book of Tehillim.
Every Shabbos?
Every Shabbos, 8 o'clock. Huh?
No, Shabbos. How about
Okay.
Supposed to.
Big square?
Now what's interesting is that up until this point, the two big ideas that Alter Rebbe spoke about, number one was the idea of davening B'tzibur properly, the other was Chilkas Hashas. And the common thread between them, well, Alter Rebbe doesn't say it, is both of them is about a tzibur. You could daven yourself. You could daven yourself in shul. You could daven yourself in shul even when there's a minyan, right? Minyan starts at 9 and you come, you're doing your thing. Alter Rebbe is saying, no, it's not. You're not davening yourself. You're part of a kehillah. And then the Alter Rebbe says, learning also. I learn Gemara. I learn myself. What do I need? No, learning also. There's the idea of being part of a larger kehillah. So both the common denominator between the two of them is the importance of realizing how we are part of a larger kehillah. Sure. There's even a parsha in the Torah that talks about this, right? Vayakil Moshe, right? The idea of creating a kehillah. It's not about individuals, but the larger kehillah. And now we'll move on to the third thing that Alter Rebbe asks. Sorry?
Finishing Shas every year.
Well, because if you are taking a Masechta and you're part of the Chalukah, so then it's considered in a way as if you finish the whole Shas also, because you're part of that. Everyone is Masachet together, becomes a Kohol. So this way, every single year, the whole Kehillah, every one of the Kehillah is finishing Shas. And now we're going to move on to the third thing that Alter Rebbe is requesting. The third thing, I don't know what the connection is between the first two things we saw a connection. The third thing is a different area altogether. And because Machmas Chalishas Adair, because of the weakness of the generation, Ein koyach b'chol echad ve'echad lis'anis kiroi eloi. We don't have the koyach, everyone to fast as is appropriate. This is something which we learned in Igeres HaTshuva about, that Alter Rebbe says over there, as I'm sure you all remember from when we learned Igeres HaTshuva, right, Ruben?
Sure.
Yeah. That back then the Alter Rebbe was battling this misconception that tshuva is accomplished through fasting. The Alter Rebbe is very, very emphatic that fasting is not part of tshuva. The Alter Rebbe says over there, the tshuva is simply the resolve not to do any more averis, abandoning the way of averis, and ligmer belibe, the person resolves that he's not doing averis anymore. That's what tshuva is, and not fasting. Sorry.
So what is fasting?
So what is fasting?
It's supposed to bring you to tshuva.
So what is fasting? So Alter Rebbe explains over there. You don't remember, Sheldon? You have to review the whole Tanya now.
It seems to me that the fasting is supposed to bring you to tshuva.
So Alter Rebbe says the purpose of the fasting is, in times of the Beis Hamikdash, a person did an avera, so he brought two kabbanas, he brought a chatas, and the chatas affected the kapara. And after the chatas, you brought an oila. And what was the oila? The oila was the doirin, was the gift that you give. That after, imagine you offended someone, you hurt someone, and then you go ask forgiveness. I forgive you. Okay, good. I forgive, but I didn't forget. Or I forgive and I forget, but I don't forget that I forgot. You know, right? So, in other words, just because someone forgave you doesn't mean that the relationship has been restored to the way it was. It's okay, I forgive you, but the harm to the relationship was done. And how do we fix the harm in the relationship? So in times of that was the oil. He says that there was just like a person offended the king, so first you have to get someone to go into the king and ask for forgiveness for you. And after the king forgives, then you bring a gift to the king. And the gift is what's meratza. That appeases the king. Today we don't have the karbanas anymore. So tshuva accomplishes the kapara, and the fasting accomplishes the what? The appeasement, right? Because fasting is a little like a carbon. Why? Because when you fast, your fat and your flesh and your blood is all being diminished, and therefore it's a little like a carbon. Just like in a carbon, you took the fat and the flesh and you sprayed the blood in the mizbeach.
That's the nusach on a private fasting, and say that
Sheimiyut chalbi v'dami
at the end of Shmona Esrei.
Right. Good. So therefore, fasting is not part of tshuva, but it's important in terms of restoring the relationship. And that's why, if we look in the Sfarim, the Sifri Musar and the Sifri Kabbalah, the early Sifri Musar Kabbalah, there's a tremendous amount of fasts that is prescribed for every time a person does an Avera. Like, it's not one fast for an Avera. And Dr. Rebbe gives some examples. If you want to turn to Geras HaTshuva, to turn to page, if you turn to page Tzadik Beis, opposite of page 182, so he says that, for example, he brings up from the Sfarim, it's not the Alter Rebbe saying this, he brings up from the Sfarim, Reishis Chochma and other Sfarim, that for Kas, you get angry without looking. How many times should you fast if you get angry? Want to take a guess?
242?
151 fasts for getting angry. You hear that, Reuven? You should stop getting angry, otherwise it's you're never going to eat again. Right? And then what? A person missed a davening, 61 fasts. Well, good.
But isn't Hasidus against fasting like that?
Yes, the Alter Rebbe says, let's do inside. Well, not so good. Back to where we are. The Alter Rebbe says, we don't have the koyach anymore. People had stronger constitutions back in the day, and therefore they were able to fast, and it didn't harm them that much. It's interesting. People had shorter lifespans, but apparently that as long as they lived, it was a healthier, stronger life. And also, you have to realize, also people ate a lot less then. So I guess fasting didn't impact them as much as us. So we're busy. Wake up in the morning, you have the coffee, you have the breakfast, lunch, and supper, and each one is.
Did physical labor.
What? They did physical labor, right? They weren't on their phones the whole day. And they didn't have cars when they had to go somewhere, right? So yeah, so they were healthier. So therefore, what should we do? So we can't fast today. So what you said is correct. Today, the fasting is discouraged. But what do we do instead of fasting? L'zeis, therefore, what is the advice that's given? As our Chazal tell us, whoever keeps Shabbos kil chasei, meichlon leil kol v'neis, is forgiven all his averos. So if we can't fast, what do? We have to make sure that we're meticulous in Shmira Shabbos. And Alter Rebbe says kil chasei daika, and we're talking specifically kil chasei. It should have said kol Hashem or Shabbos meichlon leil kol v'neis. What's the word kil chasei? Chazal adding in kil chasei is telling us it's not enough that generally I'm a Shomer Shabbos. You need to make sure you know every single halacha. Therefore, everyone needs to be a baki. Everyone needs to be proficient in the many different halachas of Shabbos. So that's the third request that Alter Rebbe is going to give, is in terms of keeping Shabbos. But not stam, obviously Alter Rebbe wasn't talking to people who were Mechalel Shabbos, Chas v'Shalom, but that everyone has to be a baki. Alter Rebbe is saying, the third request that I have of the Minyanim Chassidim is that everyone should be baki in Hilchos Shabbos. Sorry? One part of it, but that's there's much more than that. Eir HaChaim, think about it for a second, right? We know the Shulchan Aruch is divided into 4 parts. And one of the parts is called Eir HaChaim. What does Eir HaChaim mean? The way of life, that's the way, every Yid has to know Eir HaChaim. Because it's not like the things that a Rav has to know, and that I'll go, if I have a question, I'll go ask a Rav. These are things. Eir HaChaim, I don't have the exact percentage, but I believe that a third of Eir HaChaim is Hilchos Shabbos. Somewhere around there, in the area of a third. Which gives the idea of just how much there is to learn about Hilchos Shabbos. And elsewhere, the Alter Rebbe elaborates on this more. If you turn to Yigaris HaKodesh Simin Chav Gimel, page Kuf Lamed Zayin, opposite of page 272. On halfway down from the top of the page of Kuf Lamed Zayin, first one line is by Pirush Rashi. Here the Alter Rebbe says, "B'Shabbos Kodesh, Ba'alei Mincha Shabbos Kodesh, when Mincha time, when comes time for Mincha, Yasku b'Hilchos Shabbos." This is also a letter that the Alter Rebbe wrote, by the way, to the Shuls, the communities. He says that it says that after Mincha and Shabbos, I want everyone to learn Hilchos Shabbos. Why? Ki Hilchos Rabata l'Shabbata, that there's so many halachas of Shabbos. So bechal yochil la'adam likashel b'chas v'shalom. So easy for a person to stumble. Afilu be'iser karos skila. Not only a drabana, not a shvus, but even a iser which is connected to karos and skila michsar and yediyah, simply because you don't know. The Shigagas Talmud Elo Zadin Chaser Shami, the Alter Rebbe says, you're going to make a mistake. You can say, oh, but I did it by mistake. No, no such thing. If you made a mistake because you didn't learn, that's as if you did it on purpose, because you're guilty for not having learned. The Ein Tzachlim Adon, you have to mention, B'Yisuri Divrei Sefer, when you talk about the Derabanans, Sherabu, K'mirabu, L'mayla, there's so many Yisurim, B'frat B'Yisuri Muksa, especially the prohibitions of Muksa, the Shchichi Tuva, which are so common. V'chamurim divrei Torah, divrei Seifrim yeser medivrei Torah, and we have to be even more careful about that which Chacham say even more than the words of Torah. Okay, so that's the next thing that the Alter Rebbe said. Now, in terms of keeping Shabbos, so here the Alter Rebbe says you have to be baki in the halachas of Shabbos. That's request number 1. But then there's going to be another element to the request of the Alter Rebbe. More internal, also related to Shabbos and Shmira Shabbos, but this is more of a Chassidic request, and that, Emir Hashem, we will learn about next week, and with that we will be Messiahing the Tanya.
Thank you.
But we didn't, we'll talk something else now, but the last few lines of Tanya will leave Emir Hashem for next week. Yeah. So, as I mentioned earlier, this week's Parsha is Vayakel. So, Bashkach Pratis, we're busy learning in this letter from the Alter Rebbe, and it's really a letter the Alter Rebbe wrote to Kehillas, to communities. And not only it's written to communities, but we saw that some of the Alter Rebbe there is very strongly focused on Tefillah B'tzibur, the idea of a call, and also Limud HaTorah B'tzibur. And what's interesting, the Rebbe points out many times, is that we have 2 parshas in the Torah. The one parsha is called Vayakel, another parsha is called Pikudei. And very often they're together, although this year they're not together, but very often they're together. And as we find sometimes that it's interesting is that we have 2 parshas that sometimes they go together, and if you look at their names, it's interesting that they seem to be opposite of each other. You know, the most famous example is Netzav and Vayelach. What does Netzav mean? Standing. Vayelach, going, right? Are you standing in one place or are you going? Also, Vayakel Pikudei is also. Vayakel means gather together, make a kehillah. And Pikudei means counting, and who are you counting? You're counting the individuals. So each one is bringing out a separate nekuda. A kohol represents a gathering of people which is which transcends and is beyond the individual identity of the person. It's not about the individual, it's about the kehillah, it's about the sum total. And Pekudei is about the individual. And the Avodah of Vayakil, as the Rebbe explains, always has to come before the Avodah of Pekudei. Because in order to gain your individual identity and your individual holiness, first you have to be Vayakil, you have to be part of the Kahal. You're part of the Kahal. And once you're part of the Kahal, then also you can express your individuality in a holy way. And the Rebbe brings interesting examples from Halacha. He says there are many different ways in which when you take individuals and you make them part of a larger collective, so there are three possibilities, the Rebbe says. Possibility number one is that you have individuals and each one of them is important. But when you bring them together, then they gain an even greater importance. What's an example of that? Is Yidden. Every Yid is holy, but you bring together 10 Yidden together, so now we have a kahal, so it's an even greater holiness. They were important as individuals, and now they're gaining even greater importance as a kahal. But but every Yid is also individually important, right? It's not only part of a kahal. Each person has its own individual, unique holiness also. Then you have another example where something, it started off as nothing, it wasn't important, but once it becomes part of something greater, then it gains importance. But the importance that it gains is not individual importance, its importance is only that it became part of the greater. An example that Rebbe gives, although in the footnote the Rebbe maybe says it's not the greatest example, but it is tzitzis. So you have one thread. What's one thread? One thread has no kedusha to it whatsoever. Take 4 threads, put them over, tie them up, suddenly they suddenly have kedusha. But it's not that every thread now has its own individual, unique kedusha. Together, now it has the kedusha of tzitzis. And then there's another example where something has no kedusha beforehand, but after it becomes holy, it gains its own unique kedusha after it joins the kahal. And the example of that is the Mishkan, which we're talking about this week's parsha. So, for example, you have the menorah, the aron, the shulchan, the mizbeach. If they're not part of the Mishkan, do they have any kedusha to them whatsoever? No. Nothing. But once they become part of the Mishkan, once they become part of the Vayakel, not only do they become holy, but each one has their own individual kedusha. This has kedusha of the aron, this is kedusha of the menorah, and this has the kedusha of the shulchan, etc., etc. Those are the three different.
On the kahal, then each one gains
their own uniqueness. And the Rebbe says, Vayakel Pekudei, the Rebbe says that by Yidden that's the way it is, which is, the first thing is Vayakel. What's Vayakel? Vayakel means, as we said, it's not about my identity. When you're part of a kahal, it's a part of the larger identity of the kehillah. Vayakel is about bittul. Pekudei is about your metzias. Vayakel is about bittul. I'm mevatel myself. How do I become part of the kehillah? We all have our egos, but the answer is no. I need to put aside when I'm in a kehillah, I'm putting aside my ego, and it's not about what divides us. We're finding that holy neshama which unites us all, and on that level we're all the same. And that's the Vayakel. So Vayakel is the bittul. Once we have the bittul, then we can get to Pekudei, then we can all shine also individually. Not only am I holy because I'm a chilek of Klal Yisrael, but then also I'm holy because I'm expressing that holiness in my individuality, the way my seichel works, the way my midas works, with my personality, and that ultimately is the Avodah Vayakel and Pekudei. So it starts with being mevatel ourselves to the Eibishter, which is Vayakel, the Avodah Vayakel, and the next Avodah is to take that holiness which I gained through the Vayakel and allowing it to express myself in my own individual way. So that's part of being a kehillah. So we daven as part of the shul. We're mevatel ourselves to the kehillah, but ultimately, what is the goal? Is the Pekudei. Is that afterwards become that every one of us also shines individually. It's not only that I come to the shul and that's it, so I don't exist, I'm just part of the minyan. That's step number 1, Vayakel. But the step number 2 is Pekudei, is each one of us shining also in a very unique and individual way. Well, that will finish for today, and Mitzvah Hashem, looking forward to next week. when we will finish the Sefer
Tefillah
Tanya.
is instead of